Hello. Today we're going to give a general overview of the probate process as the first video of a whole series we're doing on the probate process. My name is Gregory Singleton. I'm an estate planning and probate attorney located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work for Signature Law, which is an estate planning and probate law firm that serves the Twin Cities and Greater Minnesota alike. Just as a reminder, if you like today's video, please feel free to smash that like and subscribe button. It really helps support the channel. Also, two reminders, these videos are for educational purposes only. They are not legal advice, and we will be talking primarily about Minnesota law. If you're in another state and going through a probate there, make sure to talk to an attorney in your state, as the law may differ dramatically. So, it's possible that you came to this video because you're looking for a wild Friday night, just crack some wine and want to learn about probate. But most likely, you have been appointed as, or you want to be appointed as personal representative of an estate for a probate, and you want to know what that actually means. Now, when I say personal representative, this is the Minnesota term. It's actually used in a lot of jurisdictions, but a lot of people know it, the personal representative role, as an administrator or executor, or sometimes the female version, which is administratrix or executrix. But when I say personal representative, all the words are essentially interchangeable. Probate is the process by which the distribution of a person's estate is approved by a court of law. So what does that mean? Well, basically, when you die, you got a bunch of stuff, the stuff you haven't given away, sold, or whatever, and these are your assets. Now, your assets make up your entire estate. This needs to go somewhere. Maybe you wrote a will and you specified who's going to get your stuff. Maybe you didn't write a will. Your stuff still needs to go to someone. Now, a lot of people are going to want or have a claim on your things, your assets. Your devisees are the people that you designate in your will to get things. Your heirs are those that are designated as a matter of law as receiving your property. Your beneficiaries are those that are receiving something via a trust or a tangible personal property list as part of your will. Creditors, of course, are people you owed money at the time of your death, and the state, either the federal or Minnesota state, can have a claim on your assets as well. For instance, if there are unpaid taxes or if there is a medical assistance claim. Now, during probate, what we do is we put together essentially a distribution plan to try to satisfy all of those claims on the estate. Be it by will or not a will, a court of law needs to look at the distribution and approve the distribution of the assets of the estate. Once the distribution is approved and done, the assets are distributed and the estate is closed. So we're not going to go into the procedure of probate so much today, but there are a few things about probate you should be aware of. A few characteristics of probate. And the first big one is that while in probate, your assets are frozen. This means that they are owned by the estate and cannot be distributed to your devisees, heirs, or beneficiaries, or creditors of the state. If you have a house, it cannot be sold until the appropriate time during the probate. If you have, let's say, a bank account or an investment account where all your cash is held, and you die, your spouse and your children cannot access that cash to live on during the probate until the appropriate time of distribution, or sometimes there's an early distribution option, but I warn you to be very careful about early distributions because they can get you into a lot of trouble. The second thing to know about probate ties into this is that probate can take a long time. There are statutory timeframes built into the system, such as, for example, once you give notice to creditors, they're going to have 4 months, a 4-month window in which to file a claim. During this time, unless you're doing an early distribution, you can't access, use, or distribute those assets. Another thing about probate, which is not as important, but for some people it's very important, is that probate is public. Meaning that as soon as your probate documents are filed, they are public record. A person with no real valid interest in in your estate or your probate or your assets can look things up on the court website and get copies of, say, your inventory, which lists all your probate assets. This can be used for nefarious reasons or people that just shouldn't know. So people that have large estates and have a lot of money, they may want to avoid probate just because of this reason. Another characteristic of probate is on the better side of things, is it brings conflicts to finality. And what I mean by this, if someone is going to contest your will, or contest how things are distributed, or contest who the personal representative are, there is a time and a place for it. You go into court, there's a hearing, they have certain things that are relevant, certain things that are not relevant. You deal with the issue, the judge makes a decision, and you're done with it. Things should not drag on for years and years and years and years, as long as the probate process doesn't drag on for years and years and years and years, which in most cases doesn't happen. The final characteristic of probate, which is probably the one that's on most people's mind when they think of probate, is that it's expensive. Depending on the jurisdiction and the form that the probate takes, it can be a relatively expensive prospect to go through probate. For example, personal representatives have a right to be compensated. Now, a lot of people that are personal representatives will waive this right. However, in some jurisdictions, the personal representative is owed a percentage of the estate, 2, 3, 4%. It's usually on a sliding scale. That may not seem like a lot, but when we're talking estates worth $10,000, $20,000, that's a big chunk of change. In Minnesota and a lot of other jurisdictions, it's not a percentage of the estate. It's merely a reasonable compensation, which in Minnesota tends to mean 15 to 20 bucks per hour. The personal representative has to track their time. Notably, let's say you're an attorney who earns $1,000 an hour when you're doing your attorney things. That doesn't mean you get $1,000 an hour while working as a personal representative. You just get the personal representative rate. The other things that will drive up the costs, of course, there's some expenses such as filing fees and notice fees. That can be several $100s. But the other big chunk of change that's going to happen when you're doing a probate is attorney fees. Now, for a simple estate, it may be $1,000 to $3,000. For a more complicated estate, or especially if there's an estate where someone contests, that price can go way, way up. So just be aware, if there is an opportunity to do engage in a probate avoidance plan, you might want to look at it. They tend to be more expensive, but you pay for it at the outset as opposed to paying for it during probate. Generally, and this is a big generalization, probate in Minnesota is less expensive than in a lot of other jurisdictions. So we got that going for us. Looking at the structure of probate, and I'm going to make some big generalizations here. At its most basic level, there are 3 or 4 kinds of probate. Again, this is a big generalization. There's a lot of nuances, ins and outs, and alternative procedures that can be used. But the 3 or 4 big ones are, well, I guess as follows. The first one is for very small estates. It's actually a probate alternative. You don't go through the probate process, but I'm going to throw it in here because it makes sense. It's called the Affidavit of Collection of Personal Property. And of course, we'll do a video or 2 on the Affidavit of Collection of Personal Property, what they are, how they can be used, and how they can be used as a strategy for estate planning. The second level is called Informal Probate. Now, probate is where the court is reviewing and approving of the distribution of assets. Informal probate is actually not in a court. It is done in front of the court registrar, not a judge, not a referee. You don't go to hearings. If there are people that make objections and there are hearings, you get bumped up to the next level. But for informal probate, straightforward probates, they're a little easier, a little less expensive, and you don't necessarily need an attorney, though most people do want to have an attorney help them through informal probate. Because if you do something wrong, you can get in a lot of trouble or have a lot of liability. The third and fourth level of probate is formal probate, and that would be supervised and unsupervised probate. Unsupervised probate, essentially a judge is there to open the probate and approve the appointment of the personal representative, open the probate, and then it is turned over to the personal representative and their counsel to close the estate and do the distribution. For unsupervised probate, you probably need an attorney because you're going to have a hearing in front of a judge and it's got to be done right. For supervised probate, you certainly need an attorney. The judge is there to approve the opening of the probate, the appointment of the personal representative, and must approve the distribution plan before assets are distributed. It's a lot more intense. You definitely need an attorney for that. A little bit more paperwork. As you go from, I would say, level 1 to level 4, as I've laid them out, it gets more expensive, more time consuming, and it's for more and more complicated estates. But those are the basic 4 levels and types of probate that we have in Minnesota. In other jurisdictions, it could be dramatically different. So that's it. That's a very brief cursory overview of what probate is in Minnesota. In other jurisdictions, it could be very different. In the next several weeks or months, we're going to be looking at the types of probates, some things to keep in mind, personal representatives, and a number of other things that you should know if you're doing a probate. I hope you liked today's video. If you did like today's video, please feel free to like and subscribe. It actually really helps support the channel. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below or just shoot me an email. My email's at the end of the video. I'm happy to help you out. That's it. Until next time, this is Gregory Singleton with Signature Law.